Hello and welcome to Surviving the Pandemic. This is the first of recorded interviews we're doing on our survival series to help our readers of the Community Voice newspaper and people who aren't even readers of the Community Voice newspaper, anybody who is suffering through this pandemic to survive it. How can we survive this? I'm Benita Cooch and I'm editor-in-chief of the Community Voice newspaper. And I'm here today with Robert Moody, attorney Robert Moody, with the firm Martin Pringle. And we're going to talk about a really kind of unforgotten group that is dealing with this crisis, and that's our jail populations. And I know these aren't the people you want to think of first, but boy, when I first heard, Robert, that they were postponing all these trials, my thought was, well, great, people are staying out of jail longer, or people aren't having to be charged longer. But then I did think, I thought about, but what about the people who are in jail already? And that's the group we're talking about. We're in Sedgwick County, but I know this is going to reach a lot further, and it's going to be something that's going to impact people all over the state, all over the country, but people in jail, and we're going to talk about some things that we can be doing. But there's been some effort made here in Sedgwick County to do something about it. So we've got a jail that has about room for 1,400 people, and we've got 1,400 plus people already in the jail. So since we are politely social distancing, okay, what's the potential for social distancing in a jail?
Yes, good morning. Hello everybody, and thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to give some input on this topic. But yeah, that's the problem. They're confined, they're a captive audience, and they really can't go anywhere. And so my understanding is that they haven't done any testing in Sedgwick County right now. They still are arresting individuals, but they're at least taking people's temperature and trying to figure out if they have any symptoms and things of that nature. What they're doing right now is, so big credit to Mark Bennett and his office. He's a district attorney here in Sedgwick County. Also the city prosecutors. They are identifying individuals that can be released, whether it be on house arrest or something of that nature, because they've got to get them out of jail to make room for a safe quarantine area that they can have within the confines of the jail. And I think that's the purpose of what's going on with all these releases.
Well, and they have to make room also because if they keep arresting people and you're not moving anybody through because courts are closed down, then you're just compacting a problem. So are they still arresting people? And I guess they still are arresting people.
Yeah, they still are arresting people, and I mean that doesn't stop. The law doesn't change just because we're in this, going through this pandemic and have a quarantine and things of that nature. So they're trying to clear the deck and make way so that they'll have an area to confine, because I think once they get the testing done, they're going to have some issues potentially. I mean, who knows? They haven't done that yet, and so they're just trying to prepare for if that situation occurs.
Okay. And so you have to give credit to Mark Bennett. You said he did reach out to some of the attorneys?
Yes, so Mark Bennett, he is the district attorney of Sedgwick County. Also, the city prosecutor's office has been in on this as well. The Wichita Bar Association, we have a criminal practice committee that Mark has participated on, and we had a conference call this past Wednesday, I believe, where essentially what the prosecutors are doing are they're identifying individuals that we can modify their bond conditions to release them, whether that be on house arrest or whether that be an own recognizance bond where they don't have to put up the money or pay a bondsperson in order to get released, so that they can, get out of custody, because right now, you're correct, there's no court dates pending. The Kansas Supreme Court issued an order essentially postponing or canceling all the court dates that are currently set.
And this is also the case in Missouri, because I know we reached Missouri. I mean, nobody pretty much anywhere is having court. Okay.
Right, except there are some emergency circumstances. So one of the exceptions that the Kansas Supreme Court did carve out is for bond hearings or bail hearings, and those hearings are emergency in nature because that determines whether or not a person is going to remain in custody while their case is pending.
So do you think we're hearing getting any better bonds or really?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, we're getting better bonds. So the DA's office. So basically, what the criminal defense attorneys are doing is, identifying their clients that are in custody, and then figuring out who the DA is on that case, and then reaching out to the DA, because Mark Bennett's got about 50 assistant district attorneys or so in his office, and each one of those DAs they're assigned to separate cases. So first thing we need to do is identify our guys that are in custody, and then figure out who the DA is on that case.
Okay, so if you're lucky enough to have a defense attorney and you have a person who is in jail, you need to be contacting your defense attorney. If this isn't a situation going on here where they're reaching out in your county, you need to be reaching your defense attorney and asking them to call the district attorney.
Well, in retained counsel, but I think what's happening is a lot of the people that are in Sedgwick County Jail don't have retained or private counsel. They do have or have been assigned public defenders. And so the public defender's office is also, a big shout out to Mark Orr, and he's head of the public defender's office here in Wichita, and that they're doing the same thing. I mean, they're working hard. Everybody's going around the clock trying to figure out who's in custody and trying to get these bonds modified so that we can get as many people out as possible during these times.
Okay, but same thing said, we've got some good stuff going on here in Sedgwick County, but we need to have some good stuff going on in other counties too. And so if you have a person in jail, I'm trying to help people here everywhere. If you got a person in jail, call their public defender and see what the public defenders are doing in your area to help these people get out of jail. I mean, because from what I understand, I mean, that the conditions, again, never been inside the jail. Sorry, God bless, I guess. But their sleeping quarters, like they sleep like, I understand, like this.
It's a mess and it's overcrowded, and you know, I think we have to ship people out to, I think we signed a contract with another state to house some of our inmates that are over capacity. I mean, it's common practice to ship individuals to other counties here in Kansas because the jail is over capacity. And so they'll ship them anywhere in, you know, certain counties in Kansas, and then they'll bring them back when it's time for their hearing. So
we're going to do probationary. No, we're not. That's a different one. That's a probationary hearings. The ones you're doing now are bail hearings.
Bail hearings, that are correct.
But then we've got people who have probation violations. These are
Correct.
people that are just, I guess they didn't show up to the probation officer, and the probation officer puts out an arrest for them. Is that
correct?
The process?
And so so that's the other hearing that we're doing. So we're doing the bond hearings and trying to get those done, and then probation violations hearings. And so probation is when somebody's already been sentenced. They've been either placed on probation with certain terms and conditions that they must comply with, and like reporting to the probation officer or taking UAs, or there are certain classes or treatments that they may have to take depending on what the nature of the crime is. And so if they don't comply with those things, then the probation officer will issue an arrest warrant, and then once that person is arrested, they'll sit in custody until they have a probation violation hearing date. And at that probation violation hearing date, the judge will determine whether to reinstate that person on probation, whether to reinstate that person and add additional terms and conditions on that probation, or whether to send that person to prison or the Kansas Department of Corrections to serve the remainder of whatever their underlying sentence is.
So if they're already in the jail on a probation violation, I understand they're trying to get them a speedy hearing here in Sedgwick County.
Correct.
And with the thought that either you'll get back out, or either we're going to ship you to another crowded prison somewhere else.
That's pretty much. They're just trying to get them out of Sedgwick County.
Yeah, they're just trying to get them out.
Sedgwick County Adult Detention Facility. They're trying to get them out of there.
Yeah, send them up to another crowded prison. Send them to Hutch or someplace, or El Dorado or something like that. But get them out of our skin. But hopefully we're going to be seeing more probation people getting more time or expanded probation than sending them to other jails, because those jails are crowded also.
Right, and I mean, a lot of what we're doing is if the prosecutors are agreeable to some type of bond modification, that certainly helps the process, because at that point in time we can just send a proposed agreed order to the judge in the case. You know, there's about 10 criminal defense judges, 10 judges that do criminal defense up in Sedgwick County, and so.
Oh, welcome back. I'm Benita Gooch with the Community Voice newspaper, here with attorney Robert Moody from Martin Pringle Law Firm, and we're talking about a often forgotten group in this time of coronavirus, and these are our jail inmates that we need to do something about, because they can barely social distance, and their home is right there in the midst of all these people. It's finding it hard to get them away and not contaminate others. And so we're talking about some of the processes that are being taking place, and we're being very aggressive in Sedgwick County, where we are located right now, but also saying these things so we can encourage other people in other counties and in other states to be aggressive and go to your people and see that these same things can happen about getting some of these people out of jail. Now, the interesting thing to me about this is that our district attorney, Mark Bennett, has now released about 200 people out of a crowded prison, which still isn't enough. that are very low lying fruit, you know, traffic violations and misdemeanors and things of this sort,
Yes,
who
ma'am.
were in jail because they couldn't post bail, right?
Correct.
Okay? My thing is, if we can do this now, why couldn't we do this before? Why are these people in jail anyway? I understand there's more than 50% of the people in jail up there. Mainly, not because they've been convicted of anything, it's because they can't afford bail. It's a pauper's jail.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that gives me the opportunity to define what bond is for in the first place. We've been talking about bond and getting people released and things of that nature, but bond serves, there's two factors that the judge looks at when considering what type of bond to set. The first one is whether or not this person is a flight risk or will they show up in court when they're supposed to. That's the first factor. The second factor is, okay, if we release this individual, is that going to be a risk to public safety? And so those are the main two factors and considerations that the judge takes into consideration when they set a bond. And so if a bond and there's different types of bond, the bond that the defense attorneys try to get is an OR bond or own recognizance bond. That simply means a person needs to sign their name on an appearance bond and agree to show up in court when they're supposed to. There's also, sometimes the judge will set a cash bond. A cash bond would be simply if it's a $10,000 cash bond, then the person would have to put up $10,000. And then as long as they fulfill all their obligations that they have with the court, and show up all the court dates and see the case through to its disposition, whether that be a dismissal or a conviction or whatever the disposition of that case is, then that bond would be returned back to that individual, minus any costs, fines, fees, restitution, things of that nature. The usual bond that's set is called a professional surety bond. And so that's where these bonds would come into play, where if an individual's got a $75,000 bond, professional surety, that means that in order for that individual to get out, they have to pay the bondsman 10% of whatever the stated bond is.
And that's pay, that's not
And
get back.
That's money gone. That's money not going back to anybody. That's the bondsman's fee, because
Yeah.
the bondsman in turn then has to put up the full bond amount for that person.
And that's mama's whatever, mama's life savings.
That's why they want
auntie's
collateral or
life
something,
savings,
because if that
everything.
person, if the defendant doesn't show up in jail when they're supposed to, and there's a warrant, Mrs. Court, that's when, you got the dog, the bounty hunter situation, where they're going to find you and bring you back because they don't want to have to pay that $75,000. And so, I mean, keeping in mind that, when someone arrested, these are just allegations. They've not been convicted as of
Right.
yet. These are just allegations and we still need to go through the process. So this is the procedural aspect of the court system. We're not talking about the substance of did they do it or did they not do it.
Right.
We're talking about the procedurally. These are the steps that we need to go to before we get to the chance where we can even talk about the substance of the case.
Right. And then I understand too, okay, that there's been a new process put in place by the Supreme Court that now that you have to work with one judge all the way through. And that's the process where it used to be you could go who came up first because they wanted to see some kind of consistency. Now, am I explaining this right?
Well, and I don't know who put it in place. I just think it's something that was done here locally with Sedgwick County.
It was the Supreme Court. It came
Okay.
down.
Well, the change has been this. I mean, it used to be, like I said before, there's 10 judges that do criminal in Sedgwick County. And so basically what they do, it used to be a random assignment.
Right.
Now each case is assigned to a specific judge, and so these judges have their dockets. And, we're still trying to work through it, but what the result of it is, every Monday when jury trials are set for, any particular one of these judges might have 8 or 10 different jury trials that are set on the docket. And so typically what the judges do, they'll set a primary case that's going to be for trial, then they'll set a bunch of alternate cases for trial, because you never know, a lot of these cases get worked out at the last minute. There might be a plea deal, there might be a continuance, who knows what's going to happen. So usually prior to the jury trial date, the judge will try to figure out from defense counsel and the DA's office what's going on with the case to get a better idea. And so, it's tough, but it's not unusual for a judge to have 5 or 6 cases stacked on their
But
docket.
the resultant is people are staying in jail a much longer time before they even get their court date, before they actually have their trial.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. I understand now you could be 3 months before you even see somebody, and 6 months and a year before you get a trial.
Right.
This is what I'm hearing, and where that wasn't the process before. So if you don't have bail now, you just way out of luck.
Yeah, it's tough, and keep in mind that the United States Constitution and Kansas Constitution, that everybody has a right to a speedy trial.
Well, it doesn't sound speedy.
And what occurs though is if there's certain exceptions and exclusions to that, and so that's how we try to, with this new system in place, we're trying to work through that, and it's just we're working through it.
Okay, well, I'm not pleased, but I do think that I really would like to see how this system is working with these 150, 200 people that they've let out, what the result is, because if it's working now, it's just amazing to me how many things we're able to do now that we wouldn't even consider doing, but now all of a sudden, okay, this works because of the pandemic. Well, it probably would have worked before. And, why not? Why do some of these systems that we stick with continue to be in place? And this is one of the main ones. I mean, this bail is just something
It
we've
is
got to
one of the
get
main
wrong.
ones, and keep in mind, criminal defense attorneys, this is what we do all day, every day as far as bail hearings. I mean, we want our guys to be released. It's a lot easier for them to help assist defend their case if they're not in custody. If they're back home working, if they're with their families, if they're taking care of, business that they need to take care of.
That's the point. Go back to work. You're sitting in jail. You have not even been convicted of anything. You cannot work. You lose jobs, all these things, that interruption. Anyway, a lot. I'm passionate about that, and I'm sure you are too. And Robert's been doing a lot of great things in the community around that too, like expungements, and I know you have some things coming on that. I know this is on the pandemic, but we'll have you back and we'll talk about that too, and some things you have coming up. But thank you, everybody. We're going to be doing a lot more of these. Stay tuned with different kind of people. We have several on finances, human resources people, just coping. Just stick with us. We'll be promoting when they'll be coming up online, and as much as we can, tell others, share this video, and keep the information going. Thanks a lot. Continue to read your community voice. We're online at communityvoiceks.com, and thanks for joining us.
All right, fantastic.
All right. Super duper duper. They've been trying to get me to